I want to be beneath you.
On a summer evening with a breeze blowing, a white-haired beast woman spoke in front of the lodging.
Beneath.
In response to the question, Dunbachel carefully chose her words. At this point, what did it matter anyway?
A slave or a servant is fine. As long as I can be beneath you, I'll do anything.
If Frog was blinded by personal achievement or desire, the beast woman's eyes were fixated on the two words reproduction. So her words could easily be misunderstood.
The continent is vast.
Enkrid tried to subtly suggest that he wouldn't stop him if he left.
As long as I can be beneath you.
Dunbachel knelt. Her disheveled, greasy hair and scalp were visible. A foul smell wafted up. Seeing this, Enkrid first thought about washing up and getting some rest. So what to do with her? Actually, it wasn't a tough decision. If she intended to stab them in the back.
Is that even possible?
Before that, he somehow felt like Jackson would slit her throat. That's the feeling, just a feeling. In reality, it wouldn't have to be Jackson. If Rem or anyone else sensed anything suspicious from Dunbachel, they would immediately beat her to death. Luckily, there didn't seem to be any malice. Her life was spared by some caprice. It meant nothing, so.
If there's no malice.
Enkrid thought about the fact that his platoon had 10 members. A platoon usually consists of 40 to 50 men, and a company is responsible for 100 to 200 men.
But my platoon members are
Rem, Ragna, Jackson, Auden, Finn. Including himself, that makes 6. Isn't that too many? He almost wanted to check if Marcus's conscience was intact.
If they're going to make me a company commander, they should also replenish the personnel.
Of course, only a few would survive. Rem wouldn't leave them alone. He thought of Andrew for no reason. Finn was the only new member since Andrew. In conclusion, the company lacked personnel, and Dunbachel was more capable than a regular soldier. Her current attitude was even submissive. Submissive beastmen are rare. Amid a few complicated thoughts, one clear point emerged.
Lack of personnel.
He would get the battalion commander's permission later, and if it was deemed too much, he could get rid of her then.
All right.
I swear by Krimhult. If I'm sworn outcast, that's trust. Huh?
Come in, there are spare bunks, but wash up first.
To Dunbachel, this seemed like a bold decision. There was no sign of hesitation.
Was he planning to take me in from the start?
Such thoughts crossed her mind. No, that wasn't it. There were several moments where she could have been killed. Moments where it would have been fine to kill her, and yet she wasn't killed but let go. This showed that Enkrid was a man who kept his word.
To officially join the platoon, we'll need the commander's permission. If he refuses, there's nothing I can do. It's done.
Enkrid's words made Dunbachel think there was no way she would be refused. If she were the commander and had someone like this under her, she would nod even if they had 10 servants. Who would refuse?
Don't even think about serving me at night or anything like that. I'm not interested. So if you want to join, come in as a soldier. If you want to be beneath me, pick up a weapon and fight. If you die in battle, so be it.
Enkrid said just that much before opening the barrack door and stepping inside. Dunbachel stood there hesitating. She wanted it, but it took courage to take actual action. Even though she had longed for it, accepting something that had come true required even more courage. Was it okay for her to step inside?
Someone like me.
She had expected to be refused. That's why she hesitated. As she did, the door of the lodging swung open.
Aren't you coming?
Beyond the open door, he saw blue eyes under black hair. That face, although it was a man's, was beautiful. The moonlight flowed from those strong blue eyes, striking and scattering across his cheeks. In front of the utterly unromantic military barracks, Dunbachel felt like she might cry. Why? She had no idea. It was just that no one had ever welcomed her before. He was the first person to invite her in without ulterior motives.
I'm coming.
Her voice trembled. Dunbachel stepped inside. They say life brings opportunities and sometimes a trigger. Dunbachel thought meeting this man was such a thing. Even if others rejected her, she would endure. Even if everyone ostracized and cursed her, she would bear it.
I'm really curious about something.
Once inside, she saw a woman with orange hair. She was talking to Enkrid, speaking quickly.
You actually like being called the enchantment, don't you? That's why you bring a girl every time you go out, right?
A panther hissed right beside her. Dunbachel flinched at the sound, and Rem, who was beside her, spoke.
Don't worry, that panther rarely bites. Ah, it only bites, that big eyes brat, so if you don't provoke it, it won't bite.
Why was there a panther in the barracks? Dunbachel wondered, but then stopped thinking about it. The atmosphere was not as hostile as she had expected.
Stop talking nonsense and get her cleaned up, she stinks.
Enkrid said as he turned and began to organize his belongings. He seemed to be preparing to wash up, gathering thin linen clothes. Meanwhile, the woman with the orange hair approached.
You don't have any clean clothes, do you? Should I ask for some? If I mention the captain's name, will they give me some?
Would they give them just because of that?
Of course they would.
Finn said cheerfully and took the lead. It seemed like a bright night, illuminated by moonlight. Taking Dunbachel outside, Finn asked,
What's your name?
Dunbachel.
I'm Finn.
She extended her hand for a handshake. In ancient times, a handshake was a process to prove there were no weapons in each other's hands, and that they meant no harm. In modern times, it's also an expression of becoming good friends. As she grabbed Finn's hand, Finn smiled and said,
So how long has it been since you last washed?
Half a year.
Beastmen do not enjoy bathing.
Let's walk a bit farther apart.
Following Finn's guidance, Dunbachel entered the bathroom and, without complaint, submerged herself in the bath. She watched the water turn black and heard Finn outside mentioning that she was leaving clothes for her. Dunbachel scrubbed her body thoroughly with soap. It seemed Enkrid disliked bad smells. After bathing and changing clothes, she returned to the barracks. Finding her way back wasn't difficult. Perhaps because she had bathed for the first time. In a long while, her body felt light.
Is that really what you look like?
As she entered the barracks, Enkrid asked.
Why? Have I changed?
Dunbachel glanced downward out of habit. Her chest protruded, causing her shirt to bulge, and her pants were loose. Do the clothes make her look different?
Never mind. Your spot is over there. Go to sleep and make sure to wear some underwear.
Does it really matter? Dunbachel thought, but nodded nonetheless. Enkrid casually waved his hand and pointed to a spot. That was her place, and thus, Dunbachel became an independent member of the independent company. No one mentioned that the Beast Woman was once an enemy or a member of the Black Blade Bandits. Or even if they did, they neither doubted nor ostracized him. Why, she herself didn't know. The atmosphere within the platoon was as cold as ever, but Enkrid remained the same. Get up, train, and watch Finn get hit after practicing the isolation technique.
Aokara-style martial arts is only this much, sister.
The mouth of Hell Auden was the same as always. A vein bulged on Finn's forehead. After sweating profusely in the morning, they gulped down water to fill their stomachs and spread butter and orange marmalade on soft bread.
Where did you get this?
Enkrid asked, biting into the bread. The marmalade was delicious, sweet and tangy. Kreis, chewing next to him, swallowed the bread and spoke.
It's a new shop across from the Spice Jerky store, run by a 26-year-old woman with dull brown hair and lots of freckles. Her name is Jury, she doesn't have a boyfriend, and her ideal type is somewhere between Captain Enkrid and Ragna. She really dislikes guys like me.
Why does he know so much detail?
I know all the key people in the city, that's the job of the Gilpin Guild.
Is that right? But is someone who makes good marmalade really a key person?
Of course, you've tasted it, so you know.
Fair point. As they continued their meal, Kreis started chattering again.
Similar things will keep happening.
Similar things.
They won't leave the border guard alone.
Enkrid paused mid-rise and looked at Kreis. His large eyes briefly glanced at Dunbachel. Dunbachel sat there staring blankly into space. She needed to be given something to do. Turning his attention back to Kreis, he continued speaking.
By blocking Aspen, the kingdom has expanded its territory. Thanks to that, the military city border guard is becoming a central trade city in northern Norelia. With a permanent military presence, this transformation is currently underway.
Recently, the frequency of visits from merchant caravans had increased, and new goods were constantly arriving. The population of the city was also growing.
Jury said that marmalade needs to be made in large batches, but it's hard to store if it doesn't sell quickly. Fortunately, with more people coming and going, it sells well.
That's why the marmalade shop opened. Commercial viability is determined by population and the number of people passing through. This was common knowledge Kreis often shared when he was bored.
So, how will the surrounding areas view the border guard?
Like well-cooked barbecue or ripe tomatoes.
If you have a knife in hand and are ready to eat, just a simple slice will do. That's the position of the border guard. It looks like a juicy barbecue, tempting enough to make one want to plunge in a knife, even if it's a bit tough. How would the hungry see it? They'd want to carve it up immediately. When the pioneer village Enkrid saved grows and the trade routes expand, things might get better. But for now,
The center of northern trade.
according to Kreis, that's the position of the border guard.
That's why the packs of lichens are unending around us.
When did you start expecting this?
Well, I've felt uneasy ever since we pushed back Aspen.
Since then, even Marcus knew. As soon as he returned, he was being nonchalant about loving the city and all. The battalion commander knew of the city's crisis, so he must know how to avoid it too. It was soon time for the meeting.
Let's go.
Let's protect the spice jerky and marmalade, Commander.
Kreis said from behind. It didn't sound crazy. Those two foods were quite precious to Enkrid too. The battalion commander's office had already become a conference room. A map was spread out on the large table, with chess-like pieces scattered all over it.
Do we know the enemy's numbers? We're sending out scouting parties every hour. As of now, it's estimated to be more than 2 infantry battalions. That's a lot.
Marcus said with a wry smile. He didn't look scared. He certainly had something he was confident about. But is it okay to mention this now? All the company commanders were gathered here. Enkrid quietly stood next to Marcus.
Do you have something to say?
I have fewer than 10 members in my company.
So what? His eyes said. He was a battalion commander without a conscience. Shouldn't a company be filled with members to be considered a company?
Can I add one person, the beast woman we captured previously?
She was formerly a member of the Black Blade Bandits. Having just cut the throat of a suspected spy bandit, now he was proposing to incorporate another bandit into his ranks. Come to think of it, he also needed to report about the noble bandit whose head he had just lopped off.
Go ahead.
Is that it?
Is it just over like this?
For the details and organization, talk to the supply officer.
That really was the end of it. He turned his head as if there was no need for further discussion, worried that other company commanders might object. Enkrid looked around, but no one seemed to care. Only the ferry company commander mouthed the words.
Did you seduce another woman?
It was a fairy-style joke. He ignored it. He watched the meeting for a while. They discussed the enemy's formation, where the battle would take place, their numbers, and the opponent's key units.
Martai might use cavalry, but we don't have any cavalry.
If you added up all the horses in the border guard stables, there wouldn't be more than about 50. A few were prepared for urgent messengers, but a cavalry unit was a different story. Most of the horses, except for a few, were pack horses. There's a saying that an untrained unit is like a knife to the heart, so it was possible they would have to face mounted soldiers without any cavalry of their own.
The border guard commander has just returned.
In the midst of the military meeting, the border guard commander returned. The ongoing discussions was entirely expected. They had attacked the main force of the Black Blade Bandits. There was one unexpected piece of news mixed in. The commander suddenly said,
Well done. I heard that part of the Black Blade Bandits attacked Baron Vancento in advance. The Vancento fled suddenly, causing the protection target to be lost. While losing the target isn't an official achievement, you did well to slaughter some of the Black Blade guerrilla forces and come back alive.
It was theatrical. Marcus slammed his desk with a bang. Several pins used to mark positions on the map toppled over and rolled across the table.
How dare they kill a noble, those Black Blade bastards?
Marcus showed excellent acting skills.
So we immediately retaliated. If we hadn't followed them, who knows what would have happened.
The border guard's commander seemed a bit awkward. Enkrid watched without smiling. At the end of it all,
Some of the troops attempted to flee and we lost them. Please punish them. That's fine. They've been caught.
Marcus continued the real story after the theatrics, pointing to Enkrid.
He happened to catch them on the way.
That had happened. A gift package had arrived. Some fool from the fleeing main force of the Black Blade Bandits had been caught. Really. There was unprecedented goodwill in the border guard commander's eyes. Though he said losing the protection target wasn't an achievement, the look in the eyes of both the battalion commander and the border guard commander made it clear.
It's a definite achievement.
An achievement recognized by the influential battalion commander and the current power of the border guard. Several nobles' faces turned pale. They were quick to catch on.
Let's all have a moment of silence for Baron Vancento.
The battalion commander spoke. He wanted the man named Vancento to die as a noble, not as a bandit spy. He commemorated him as a member of the kingdom till the end. So, that was good to handle this well? This silent moment of respect was like sending a message to the remaining nobles. The perceptive nobles would understand this well.
All right, let's get back to the meeting.
The exhausted border guard commander, still covered in dust on his shoulders, became one of the people surrounding the table. The meeting resumed. Marcus's plan was full of holes. Though one might think he had something to rely on, it seemed there were nothing but flaws.
What is he really relying on?
It was a question that suddenly arose.
Kill them all.
The one shouting like a roaring tiger was the company commander of the first company. I heard that a comrade who had been with us since the time we joined the army died in the Martai rebellion.
Indeed.
The battalion commander replied, and then instructed the troops to form an extremely defensive formation. Our forces comprised 6 companies of infantry. Originally, it was 1 battalion, but 2 companies were sent as reinforcements from the battalion stationed in the Green Pearl Plains. That was quite a strain on them as well. If all the troops were withdrawn from the Green Pearl, there was no telling what Aspen might do.
If they come through the south gate, we can defend, but we cannot avoid a decisive battle on the plains.
The company commander of the second company said,
How many cavalry do we have? 50 horsemen.
50 horsemen. It didn't sound like a small number to Enkrid. War horses are costly to raise and maintain, consuming gold like it's nothing. You have to outfit them in metal armor, and the cavalry riding them also requires separate training. As much as you pour into them, cavalry on the plains is a formidable force. Even with just 50 horsemen charging with lances, they could trample hundreds of infantry. The total strength of the 6 companies was roughly 1,200 men.
50 horsemen are a significant factor.
Enkrid assessed. Despite this, Marcus remained calm.
They managed to raise that many troops through the back door.
He was not just calm, but even impressed.
The number of archers is also not small.
This was also unsettling news. To Enkrid, it meant that the enemy's preparations were thorough.
Urgent news.
The scout who burst in was the final touch. A scout who had barely survived after venturing deep into enemy territory entered the conference room, blood dripping from his left arm. The soldier, suppressing his pain, spoke.
Troops with concealed insignias have joined the enemy.
The original forces of Martai were not small. 1 battalion of infantry and a portion of cavalry. They also had archers with the strength of a company. Compared to the border guard, their quality might be slightly lower, but the numerical difference was clear. Even so, the border guard had won several times in battles against Martai, securing victories.
This is not good.
The one who spoke now was from the elite unit made up entirely of top soldiers, the border guard unit. Their prowess was undeniably exceptional. However, the thought naturally came to mind whether they could be as effective this time. There had been a string of discouraging news even before the start.
Independent company commander.
Marcus, having organized the situation, finally spoke. Enkrid realized a bit late that he was being addressed.
Yes?
Do you know the authority of the independent company?
Was there such a thing? Marcus continued.
The company commander can requisition troops from other companies if he wishes, whether it's a squad-level force or a platoon-level force.
Is this for real?
Enkrid outwardly appeared calm, but inwardly questioned Marcus's sanity. Those words implied that the independent company could act like a superior unit over the other companies. Literally.
Hey, hand over your platoon. I'll use them and return them, half dead.
What if this happened? Who would accept such an order? Enkrid saw the faces of the other company commanders. They were all not very gentle. These were people who lived on the brink of battle and wore the insignia of command. It wasn't a position one could occupy with a mild or soft attitude. So, no matter how much the battalion commander said, such opinions were,
More than that, we can give you whatever you need.
It started with the ferry company commander. Well, it made sense for that ferry.
If the border guard unit needs it.
Then the border guard commander also stepped forward. Maybe he thought he owed something because of this situation.
The first company is one body, but even divided, it fulfills its role.
Why the first company commander? Wasn't he evaluated as a potential future battalion commander? Even though the border guard commander was influential, this side also had significant influence.
What, are you going to join the Madman platoon? I can join as a whole company.
Had the second company commander always been this indecisive? Enkrid thought carefully and concluded he hadn't. Wasn't he the one who used to foam at the mouth whenever someone took people from his unit, earning the nickname Foaming Palto? The 3rd Company commander who took over after Rayon, the original 3rd Company commander, died, and the supporting company commander also had no different reactions.
Well, the independent company can be trusted.
Moreover, the company commander from the Green Pearl reinforcements, whom Enkrid was seeing for the first time, nodded and looked at Enkrid with eyes full of trust, hope, and faith.
Since when was there such authority?
Enkrid spoke. He wasn't one to show emotions. His tone was calm. The company commander nodded vigorously and replied with a voice full of laughter.
Of course, from now on.
Is this guy cursed or something?
Or maybe he ate something bad, or perhaps he was suffering from the heat. It was getting quite hot. Enkrid concealed his expression once again. He might not be good at acting, but he was a master at hiding his emotions.
I am not someone with a vivid imagination.
Marcus continued. Wondering what he was talking about, Enkrid stared at him. Meeting Enkrid's gaze, Marcus spoke again.
If you could act as you wish outside of strategy and tactics, how far could you go? Could you suppress the enemy cavalry, or defeat every incoming enemy you encounter?
But Marcus's voice began to heat up, but maybe because of the acting he'd seen earlier. It was evident that there wasn't a trace of acting in his current words. It felt that way. Sincerity in his earnest tone. It reminded him of Krang's speeches he had heard before. Krang's speeches had a power that captivated the audience. There was such majesty in his gestures, voice, and attitude that created illusions. Marcus displayed fervor instead of majesty. A burning passion, something an individual possessed regardless of age, was evident. The voice of the one engulfed in this fervor reached Enkrid.
Starting small with scouting, advancing to strike the enemy's city, and finally achieving great feats on the battlefield to bring victory to our side. And that's not all.
When Marcus slammed his palm on the table, the pins fell again with a clatter. However, no one took their eyes off Marcus. Everyone was watching his mouth. They were listening to what he was saying, enveloped by the atmosphere he created.
Surviving alone among 1,000 gnolls, proving himself and solidifying his position as the commander of an uncontrollable force. Above all, I am amazed by the outstanding skills and abilities of the company commander. So, I ask, what can you do if given unlimited authority on this battlefield?
What does Marcus believe in? Why does the battalion commander not feel threatened? Why do people accept someone who was a member of the Black Blade without complaint? Why are the company commanders indifferent when their troops are taken? Why do they show trust, hope, and faith in their eyes?
Things I have achieved.
A knight is made of skill and merit. Enkrid felt a sense of validation that what he had been doing all along was indeed correct. Pride? Such a word wouldn't suffice. A long-forgotten dream had become part of reality. At the same time, Enkrid found his purpose. He had been asked a question, so he needed to answer it. Krang's speech is ended by showing his own majesty and drawing in those around him, but Marcus had asked Enkrid to give an answer.
Elite few.
In the current continent, the balance of the battlefield hinges on the presence of knights or knight-level forces. When a knight steps onto the battlefield, if there is no knight to oppose him, a massacre ensues. Although duels happen more often than massacres, sometimes strategies are devised to pit a knight against a unit. Conversely, that can be a trap, using the unit's strength to kill the knight.
The enemy doesn't know me.
Nor do they know the Madman platoon. Marcus made sure of that. An elite unit with unpredictable force, 5 members with at least junior knight-level strength. Facing his changed self, Enkrid spoke.
I don't know. Let's do everything we can.
In truth, this was the first time Enkrid had such authority, and it was probably the first time Marcus proposed such an outrageous strategy. Instead of a knightly order, he created an independent company of fewer than 10 and gave them battlefield authority. It sounded as if the fate of the battlefield rested on Enkrid alone. Thinking his answer might be inadequate, Enkrid was surprised to see Marcus smile with satisfaction.
Then,
having been given authority, he would use it. His pounding heart drove Enkrid. As he headed out, a sound reached his ears, a trumpet call, and the faint sound of drums echoed from beyond the city walls. The enemy was approaching.
all troops assemble.
Marcus shouted as he emerged from the conference room, and Enkrid moved, almost running. He had a battlefield where he would fight with the core members of his unit, But as always, gathering them was the first task. It had always been that way since they were a troublemaker squad. Heading towards the barracks, Enkrid saw company members already armed and coming out.
Deployment, right? Marcus must have given you full support to sweep away the cavalry, huh?
Kreis, wearing a leather helmet askew, said,
He predicted it.
That's what Enkrid thought.
No.
Then what? Did he ask you to bring back the enemy commander's head? That's a bit much.
No.
He didn't ask you to do anything.
He asked.
Enkrid naturally took the lead as he joined the group. While he was talking with Kreis, Rem interjected.
That big guy said we should go fight now, is that true?
Yes. But did Rem usually step up without any complaints? He used to gripe that they should smash their own commanders' heads first every time they went out. Well now, the commander with the smashable head was him. Actually, there was nothing surprising about Rem. He was always eager to step up on the battlefield. The surprising part started here.
I heard Martai and some forces without insignia have arrived.
It was Ragna, a guy who usually showed no interest in anything new about the enemy forces. Enkrid looked up at the sky, wondering if it had split in two. The sky was perfectly clear. There were almost no clouds.
That's right.
As he lowered his head and answered, Audin, smiling behind him, said,
Brother, let's go. There are those outside waiting for us to send them to the Lord.
It didn't seem like something a priest would say, but those who served the war god were always like that. Jackson just nodded silently. These were not the kind of people who moved just because Christ called them. So why did they move? Enkrid realized once again that his relationship with these people had subtly changed. From just a squad leader who took the brunt. A squad leader who was fascinating to watch. A squad leader who didn't cause trouble. He had progressed to a platoon leader who knew a few things. A platoon leader who got a bit better when taught. And further still,
If I lead them.
he was a person and a commander who was recognized. His heart pounded, as much as when he longed for his dream.
So what did he ask?
Kreis asked again.
He asked what I could do.
Wow, what a shameless guy.
From Enkrid's one sentence, Kreis inferred the rest of the tangled story. Show your full potential, that was the message.
So I said I would do everything I could.
Are you serious?
At Kreis's words, Enkrid showed a faint smile. He didn't know, was it time to have confidence or not? Was this arrogance or something else? Was the turmoil in his chest just a desire to fight? Or was it the thrill of realizing he was now in a different position on the battlefield with these men? He didn't know. Enkrid didn't bother to figure it out. Right now, he just wanted to swing his sword. To let the enemy know what he could do. Desire and ambition mixed in his chest. Enkrid wanted to make his presence known to the enemy and leave a strong impression. It was a newfound proactive spirit. Enkrid, who had been striding along, looked back and asked Dunbachel, who was lagging behind.
What's wrong with your eyes?
It's fine, I can do my part.
Her eye area was blue. It shone with her golden pupils and the blue around her eyes. There was no need to ask whose work it was at. The one who could create blue paint on a person's body without actual paint. Wasn't that Rem's specialty?
Stop hitting the kids.
It was just a simple sparring demonstration. They wanted to see me fight.
Well, kids grow up while getting hit sometimes. Enkrid let it slide. If they were the type to run away or plot behind his back after getting hit a bit, they wouldn't have even thought of staying under him in the first place. The sound of the bell from the bell tower. It meant the enemy was starting to appear. Through the open gate, people who had been farming outside the walls were coming in. They were residents engaged in agriculture. Regardless of the enemy's numbers, they would attack the walls first. It meant siege engines were essential.
They have them, right? Mangonels.
Kreis answered Enkrid's question.
Of course.
Bring a few sets of clothes from the people coming in. Ones that fit our size, right now.
That's quite a brilliant plan.
Kreis answered immediately, even without an explanation. Enkrid appreciated not having to explain at length. Kreis responded and quickly moved, while Enkrid headed toward the gate instead of the place where the commanders gathered on the wall. Soon, Kreis returned with the clothes.
Audin's size is a problem.
Yeah, that was undeniable.
Brother, this body just needs a simple cover.
Odin waved his hand, tore a nearby tent, and draped it over himself like a cloak. It suited him quite well.
So, what are you planning?
Rem asked. Enkrid wondered if a detailed explanation was necessary, but he soon decided it wasn't.
Just follow and see.
Enkrid and the madman platoon stepped out through the gate. They wore the clothes of those who entered through the castle gates. Enkrid moved straight outside.
Hey, where are you going?
A soldier who was helping guide the residents from the castle wall shouted. Enkrid lifted the old, wide-brimmed hat that covered his head. His eyes became visible, and he met the gaze of the soldier who called out to him. Blue, clear eyes, along with a visible nose and lips. It wasn't difficult to recognize who he was.
A walk.
Captain Enkrid.
Recently, it was rare to find someone in the city who didn't recognize Enkrid's face.
Shh.
Enkrid signaled for silence by putting his index finger to his lips, and then went outside. He had left Kreis behind. That guy was useless in a frontal battle. Unlike the crowding residents, he moved in the opposite direction, which naturally made him stand out a bit. He felt like a fish swimming upstream. He didn't care. It didn't matter if his allies saw him. The important thing was that the enemy didn't see him. It was still too early for the enemy scouts to be within visual range, so it was a perfect time to go out and hide.
Let's go.
Enkrid said and started running.
An ambush?
Finn, who was running beside him, asked.
Yeah.
Finn didn't say anything more. She didn't question what an ambush meant with less than 10 people. She knew. Having spent some time with Auden, she had felt a lot. The madman platoon was full of monsters. That included Enkrid. Marcus was stroking his beard as he stood on the gallery above the castle wall when his adjutant, who had come with him from the kingdom, asked,
Will it be all right?
It wasn't that he doubted Enkrid's strength. He believed in him. But aside from trust, it also looked precarious. Aside from trust, it appeared that way on the outside. That's why they had prepared a backup plan.
I don't know, not sure.
Then why are you smiling?
The adjutant couldn't read any worry or concern in Marcus's expression. He found it truly curious. This was the first time he had seen Marcus speak so passionately, and the first time he had seen him smile like this.
No, I've seen it a few times.
He had seen such a smile when Marcus discovered his favorite tea leaves, bid for them at an auction, and successfully acquired them. It was a smile seen when he found something precious, and all that remained was to enjoy it.
It might be fun, if nothing else.
He wasn't someone who found battlefields fun, but saying it like this meant there was a reason. The adjutant realized that Marcus had a considerable amount of expectations for Enkrid, the company commander. Not just expectations, it seemed like he was simply enjoying it.
The forces without a crest are likely the Viscount's army of Bentra. Count Molson might have sent people too,
the adjutant said. Molson had the nickname of a talent collector. He had many skilled subordinates. Marcus had expected this. Hiding their crest was because they couldn't help openly. Count Molson also wanted to cut and devour the chunk of meat that was the border guard. It was troublesome, and it meant that even a big predator had joined the fray. And with Molson, you never knew what cunning trick he might pull. Marcus didn't concern himself with matters beyond his reach. After all, they couldn't ask for help from the central authority, and if this was a gamble, it made sense to bet everything on the one card he trusted. If he didn't even think of it as a gamble, there was nothing more to say.
But why isn't the independent company commander coming up?
Marcus asked. At the time when all the commanders were gathering on the gallery, only Enkrid was missing.
Over there.
As soon as Marcus asked, the sharp-eyed ferry company commander pointed. Residents engaged in farming and other auxiliary tasks were entering from outside the castle walls, and some were moving against this flow. No matter how well they hid, it was hard to conceal Auden's large frame. Of course, the ferry company commander had recognized Enkrid.
He's going out.
No orders had been given yet. Marcus had merely granted him the authority.
Huh?
Marcus let out a small exclamation. He had a rough idea of what Enkrid was trying to do, and if it worked, the enemy would have a very complex start. A smile naturally formed on his face. The commander of Martai was named Ulf. He wanted to be called a general, and he had the abilities to justify it. He had proven himself in personal combat and as the commander. All his adjutants also called him general. The nickname of the border guard's leader was battalion commander, while the leader of Martai was called general. Well, it didn't matter what they called themselves.
General, we're ready.
The Mangonels.
8 in total. No problems.
Mangonels were mobile stone-throwing siege engines, operated by 6 strong men. Their advantage was that they were mobile and didn't require setup. Although less powerful than trebuchets, they were easier to operate. Because they had wheels, they were considered mobile siege artillery. Trebuchets, on the other hand, required setup. Ulf thought 8 mangonels were more than sufficient. In addition, there was support from the crestless forces. The commander of those forces approached.
I don't think there's any need to drag this out, do you?
He didn't know the man's name or face. The man had brown eyes and a scruffy mustache. He didn't look older than 30. Although the man showed some courtesy, it didn't seem like he respected Ulf. Anyway, he must have something to rely on to have come here. Ulf didn't mind. He was one of the commanders of the Viscount's army of Bentra. He didn't seem interested in command, but that wasn't Ulf's concern. Instead of worrying about such things, it was more beneficial to focus on the battlefield. It was better to assess the enemy's strength than waste time on trivial thoughts. Ulf kept an eye on those who had performed well in previous battles. Thankfully, or perhaps not, the Viscount's army of Bentra had 2 commanders. The other one was more communicative. In reality, this second commander was in charge of most of the troop control. That second commander had said,
Enkrid? Ah, that guy? Half of it is bravado. He goes around boasting impossible achievements. If I meet him on the battlefield, I plan to put a hole in his throat.
The pointed estic at his waist gave weight to his words. Ulf nodded in agreement. After all, weren't they fighting together? They were unusual, though. The first commander, with his bored expression, just followed along and occasionally urged them to hurry.
Whatever.
Victory in this battlefield was predetermined, and he was the main actor. By devouring the border guard, he would turn this area into a new eastern bridgehead. Grand dreams soared high. Around that time, it began to rain. Rain fell from a clear sky. It was a prank of the summer god. Ulf was on horseback at the rear of the battlefield. A few houses were visible outside the border guard's walls. There was no sign of life in the houses abandoned by the residents. The mangonels moved along the well-cleared path. Naturally, it was the path between the houses. Seeing the siege engines lined up and moving through the houses was reassuring. The thin rain began to make the ground slick, so it was time to hurry before the path turned muddy.
Hurry up.
At Ulf's command, the soldiers quickened their pace. The prank of the summer god, that's what they called rain falling from a clear sky. It was a kind of superstition. After all, there were no gods representing each season. Different regions called it different things. In the West, they said it was the result of some sorcerer's mistake. Enkrid had once heard Rem say that while watching this kind of rain, Enkrid wasn't overly tense. He thought he was just doing what he had to do. That didn't mean he planned to do it half-heartedly.
Is the summer god helping us?
Since it was raining, visibility was slightly reduced. This was a good condition for those hiding. Predicting the path the enemy would take wasn't difficult. It was thanks to experience. If there were siege engines, they would naturally take the well-cleared paths, passing between the houses. His prediction was correct. Anything with wheels needed a clear path. Soon the sound of wheels rolling was heard. They opened the doors of the houses made of a mix of mud and wood, hiding behind them. Odin couldn't hide that way, so he was inside the house. Rem, Ragna, and Dunbachel were behind the door of the house, on the opposite side. On this side were Enkrid, Jackson, and Odin. Finn was further back.
Destroy the siege engines and retreat.
Enkrid relied on his past experience. There was no need to burn everything in one battle. They could gradually wear them down. It wasn't a strategy or a tactical war plan. He was simply applying what he had learned from the battle with the gnolls, but it seemed plausible.
Not bad.
Kreis nodded in agreement. That was enough. Enkrid hid behind the door, watching as the mangonel passed by with a creaking sound.
Damn it, raining now of all times.
A soldier from the enemy army grumbled as he pushed the mangonel and made eye contact with Enkrid. Enkrid spoke in a calm tone.
Odin, break it.
The soldier's eyes widened. The surprised man opened his mouth to shout. A dagger flew from Jackson's hand and embedded itself in the man's forehead. The man hit in the forehead by the knife fell back against the siege engine with a thud. His limbs went limp as he collapsed to the ground like an old wooden puppet.
Ambush.
There were more than 10 men pulling the siege engine. It wasn't possible to silence them all. Enkrid also jumped out. He stepped on the ground and drew his sword, making 3 stabbing motions. He thrust to the left in a diagonal line, pulled back, thrust straight ahead, and finally thrust to the right in a diagonal line. The 3 stabs created 3 casualties.
Gah, gah.
3 screams rang out simultaneously. The first man was stabbed through his mouth, creating a hole. The second man was stabbed through the throat, and the third, with extra force, pierced through his leather armor and into his heart. It was a technique that combined finesse and power. In the midst of this, Audin burst out. The wall crumbled as he emerged, startling the enemy soldiers even more.
Whoa, what's that?
The shouts of surprise were varied. Audin stood by the siege engine, grabbed it with his left hand, and pulled back his right fist before striking. Enkrid recognized that this move also incorporated the Valaf-style martial arts technique. He pushed his left foot forward and twisted his ankle, knee, and waist. The resulting punch was like a cannonball. A thunderous noise like a summer god's prank exploded amidst the rain. Raindrops scattered in all directions. The mangonel wasn't a delicate siege engine. Its rough construction was its strength. But that didn't mean its clutch, trigger, and wheels weren't important. Any structured weapon had clear weaknesses. Of course, Audin didn't concern himself with that. He shattered the thick wooden frame that supported the mangonel's structure with his fists, sending splintered wood flying amidst the rain. With just a few punches, he destroyed the siege engine. It was more than just great strength. Only an ogre or giant, a monster among monsters, could do such a thing. Even Frog wouldn't be able to do this easily.
Bless the humble servant.
Destroying siege engines with his bare fists and saying such things. Enkrid once again admired his sincerity. A similar scene was unfolding on the opposite side. Over there, Rem was playing Audin's role. His axe shattered the mangonel's basket, and he cut through all the tough ropes that acted as triggers. Ragna leisurely walked, slicing, cutting, and stabbing the approaching enemy soldiers.
Everyone, form ranks. Don't charge recklessly.
A commander among the siege engines shouted. They had lost the 2 front engines, but they couldn't just let it continue. He planned to retreat and regroup for a counterattack. The commander thought this and was about to speak.
Guruk.
However, regardless of his thoughts, the meaning he held in his heart would never be spoken aloud. Enkrid saw a shadow suddenly appear behind the commander. It was Jackson. He slit the commander's throat from behind with a dagger, threw the corpse aside, and then stabbed a soldier near the rear siege engine, killing him. Dodge and stab. The simple moves increased the number of casualties. Audin focused on destroying the siege engines instead of fighting the soldiers. A series of resounding crashes followed. Naturally, all eyes turned to Audin, and while they were momentarily distracted, Jackson vanished. There was only
Gah.
Retreat, retreat.
Only the shadow slicing the throats of those shouting remained. Combining momentary acceleration with his dagger, Jackson picked off soldiers trying to regroup. Enkrid swung his sword, thinking it was a familiar scene. The enemy soldiers were lined up in front of him as well. Dunbachel fought only those who got close to Ragna. Finn had initially kept her distance and stayed in the house at the back. She was observing the entire situation from behind rather than participating directly in the battle. It was, of course, Enkrid's order. They charged and advanced. Destroying the 8 siege engines lined up wasn't a difficult task. There was a soldier who tried to stop Audin. He grabbed and threw the approaching soldier with tremendous force and charged. He rammed the siege engine with his shoulder, toppling it sideways. It seemed unbelievable, but it was happening right before their eyes, leaving them in astonishment. The time it took to destroy all 8 siege engines was just about 10 minutes. The summer god's prank was originally brief. During that short prank, Martai lost 8 siege engines. Finn blew a prepared whistle. The main enemy force was beginning to move. At the sharp-eyed ranger's signal, Enkrid retreated. Naturally, the others followed suit. Dunbachel was the first to sprint. Watching the beastkin dash away, everyone retreated. The battle hadn't even properly begun, nor had they started shouting about surrendering in front of the castle walls. Martai had lost their siege engines, and the soldiers of the border guard, who had been tense due to the enemy forces, regained their composure. Enkrid turned and ran. If they fled like this, it would be a successful operation. However, Enkrid suddenly stopped running.
What are you doing?
Rem noticed and spoke. Enkrid turned completely around instead of answering. He saw the halted enemy forces behind them. Some hadn't grasped the situation, some stared dumbly in their direction. Some shouted to pursue, some glared with wide eyes, and some lay on the ground with bewildered expressions. What had brought them to this state? What had stopped them in their tracks? A hot sensation surged from his lower belly to his throat.
Aren't you coming?
Finn raised her voice. Everyone looked at their commander's back, wondering what he was doing. Enkrid, for some reason, just felt like doing it. He wanted to release that hot sensation.
My name is Enkrid.
He declared his name while standing still.
If you retreat now, you can live.
He raised his voice calmly. It wasn't a scream or a shout. It was an appropriate resonance. Even so, it spread wide, deep, and loud. The eyes of the enemy soldiers in the front line fixed on Enkrid. Dozens, hundreds of pairs of eyes. Enkrid met their gaze. It was a display of boldness, a sudden surge of audacity. That's why he said it. A declaration of war and a warning imbued with his own name. Everyone's eyes focused on him. It was an unprecedentedly bold act.
Is he crazy?
Ram said, but it gave their own soldiers an indescribable thrill. Ooh-ah! Of course, the cheers grew louder. To stop in front of more than 1,000 enemy soldiers, to shout in front of them with such spirit, it was as if they were witnessing the hero of a story.
Get a grip. Are you on drugs?
And Rem kept muttering from behind, "That bastard." Amid the shouts of the Naurilia army, some of Martai's commanders felt a surge of anger.
He's asking for a beating. Kill that bastard.
They knew he fought well, but to act so leisurely while running away, it seemed like a deliberate provocation, as if he was mocking them by imitating a heroic epic. How could their anger not flare up?
Chase him. Don't let him in. Get him. Stop. Stop, you bastard.
Martai's infantry, riled up, charged forward, just as Enkrid and his companions hurriedly ran inside the castle gates. The hands of the Naurilia archers on the watchtower became very busy.
Ga, arrows, shields, raise your shields.
Martai's charging infantry retreated, adorned with arrows.
Shoot, shoot. Hit them all.
Vengeance's shout rang out loudly. He had been put in charge of some of the archers, as Martai's infantry withdrew.
Ho.
The border guard reserve unit on the wall cheered, as if they had achieved a victory in an unexpected exchange of power during the first battle.
Come at us. Run if you want to live. My name is Rian.
There were even those who openly taunted the enemy and revealed their names. It couldn't be called a significant victory, but it felt like they had won before the real battle had even started. The enemy still had more troops, and the difference was clear, but it didn't feel like they would lose. Most soldiers felt that way. Naturally, this atmosphere was created by Enkrid, so it was only natural that all eyes were fixed on Enkrid as he entered, seemingly indifferent. The destruction of the mangonel, the exploits of a few enemy soldiers. This news reached the commander of the nameless forces. Since it happened right in front of him, he had just received a detailed report. He wore a roughly pressed helmet. Through the visor, the eyes of the mustached commander glinted coldly.
There are some interesting bastards here.
There was a chilling, murderous intent in his tone. His nickname was the Elite Slaying Blade. Originally, he thought this fight would be neither interesting nor fun, but now he saw some who made his heart race.
At least 3.
They were worth killing personally. Methods and means of killing them flashed through his mind.
A melee would be good.
What if they hid in defense? Then it would be more advantageous to surround and press them. It was an exceedingly interesting situation. Mangonels? Ambush? Damage from the ambush? Those were unrelated matters to him. Though the mustached man was called the Elite Slaying Blade, the actual commander of the nameless forces had slightly different thoughts.
That damned bastard.
The commander of Viscount's army of Bentra wasn't foolish. Though narrow-minded, he had the brains to think things through.
He suddenly stops running and reveals his name.
It wasn't just ordinary courage. Starting off by destroying 8 mangonels, it felt like they were being pushed back from the start, and then he revealed his name and retreated. He focused solely on the facts. Why? Why did he do that? The commander soon reached a conclusion. It was the most rational judgment based on experience and theory.
That bastard.
It was a cheap trick, a strategy. What methods would those driven to the defensive choose? One of them was self-aggrandizement. It was a dirty tactic, a strategy to exaggerate one's abilities to make the enemy overthink. It was one of the tactics used because a few elites could change the tide of a battlefield. It was a warning that there were strong individuals among them, so be prepared when attacking. Was he really that skilled? Destroying the mangonels was impressive, but
That's all.
probably overextended. No, definitely overextended. It was a mission they undertook with their lives on the line. They must have been lying in ambush for days before the advance, consuming many resources for this one attack. It was likely a plan set in motion from the moment Martai began to advance.
It's just feather fluffing.
The commander of Viscount's army of Bentra spoke after organizing his thoughts. The Martai's chief commander pondered, then nodded. They reached the same conclusion.
Bring more siege weapons.
The general ordered. They were already making some more in the city. Even hastily made weapons would be better than nothing.
Repair what we can.
If they repaired them, they might salvage one or two. They couldn't do much about the misaligned and broken ones, though.
That monstrous bastard.
The one who smashed the siege weapons with his fists, he stuck in their minds and was a concern.
He must have taken some kind of drug.
If they took the drugs made by those alchemists to capture giants and frogs, such feats were possible, a drug that gave them strength beyond their limits for a short time. Of course, the side effects were severe. If used incorrectly, they could die as soon as the effect wore off. Narrow-mindedness, prejudice, and preconceptions were like demons that, once embedded in the mind, were hard to shake off. Such was the case for these people. Though the elite slaying blade respected their opponent's skills, he saw them as just right for him to kill. Everyone had their own delusions.
We just need to surround and starve them out.
The commander of Viscount's army of Bentra clenched his fist. They exaggerated their abilities, so now they'd focus on defense. But if they came out, he was also the commander of the cavalry. If the enemy opened the gates in retaliation, they could sweep them with the cavalry. It was a simple but efficient strategy. It didn't matter whether the enemy exaggerated or not.
Let's do that.
Martai's general agreed. Kreis watched the enemy's movements from atop the castle wall.
They're angry.
They were murmuring and shouting. Despite the destruction of 8 siege weapons and numerous deaths, they showed anger instead of fear. They weren't lacking in fighting spirit or morale. Even when looking at Enkrid and his companions, they spewed anger. How could they be like that?
The battle time was short.
The fierce moments were very brief. Even if there was impressive combat power, only a few actually saw it.
The tone of that last commander.
Revealing his name and then telling them to get lost while fleeing had worked effectively. If that was all it took to make them leave, they wouldn't have come this far. If it was intentional, it was a very appropriate provocation. A provocation that made it easy for the enemies to be deceived.
If it were me.
Grace briefly imagined himself as the enemy commander. Repeating, "If it were me," several times, he observed the enemy's movements. He saw the enemy forces moving from atop the wall. They were flustered but had no intention of retreating. They were flustered, but there was no fear among them. Their troops were regrouping. He remembered how they had retreated in an orderly manner after chasing them. It was a sign of well-trained regular soldiers. The enemy's fighting spirit was still strong.
They underestimate us.
Their confidence came from underestimating this side. Reasons for their confidence? Plenty. They had superior numbers, were well-trained, and had received more reinforcements than necessary. Added to this was the story, deliberately concealed but still spread, of Enkrid's prowess.
Do they see it as bluffing? Do they think we're just puffing up in fear?
Maybe. It wasn't entirely certain, but it seemed likely. It would be helpful to know the name or disposition of the enemy commander, but that would require the Gilpin Guild to elevate itself to the level of an intelligence guild.
That would double the work.
Now was the perfect time. Earning just enough krona was ideal. Kreis organized his thoughts. The enemy commander hadn't grasped their full strength, and his side had a very sharp sword.
It would be good if they were fools.
Not suspicion, but confirmation bias. Those who wouldn't change their minds once they believed they were right. If so, no grand strategy would be necessary. All of this was the result of Enkrid's whimsy. stepping out to smash the mangonels and then returning immediately. If he had fought longer and revealed his strength, the story might have been different.
But did the captain intend all of this?
That was something he could ask.
What are you doing?
Vengeance, who was leading the archers, asked. Kreis kept muttering to himself, looking as if he was possessed by an evil spirit. Vengeance hated ghosts and spirits. They were the cause of his sleepless nights.
I was just organizing my thoughts. Is that so?
Vengeance doubted anything would change just because Kreis organized his thoughts. But in Kreis's mind, the future of the battlefield was unfolding. Scenarios for victory were unraveling in his head. He had no intention of sharing them, though. Kreis believed everyone would act on their own.
Are you okay?
Rem asked as they entered the border guard. Enkrid examined himself. Was he injured anywhere? No, he wasn't. There hadn't been any real danger. It was just a light warm-up. Why not? Even though it was an improvised operation, it seemed doable, so he went ahead with it. Of course, Martai's side thought it was an ambush prepared for days with significant resource investment, but that wasn't the case at all. It was just something he did because it seemed feasible, partly as a warm-up.
I think you might have hit your head.
Rem spoke with a serious face, without a hint of a smile. Ragna, standing next to him, also looked at Enkrid, as did Rem and Audin.
Do you have a fever?
Finn was the last to ask. Enkrid felt sad that there was no sense of romance in their hearts. He understood why they were reacting this way. It was because he revealed his name at the end.
I was just feeling spirited.
There was nothing to hide, so he said it outright. Instead of teasing, Rem, uncharacteristically, let out an impressed "who." A cheer-like sound came from above Enkrid's returning unit. Since he had gone out and destroyed the siege weapons, this reaction was expected, amid the cheering.
Spirited, huh?
Ragna muttered, deep in thought. Enkrid had just acted on a whim. Ahead he saw Kreis, who had descended from the gallery.
Provoking and planting seeds of doubt in the enemy's mind was intentional, or not? Never mind. So why did you say your name?
Many had asked why he revealed his name. Enkrid repeated the same answer.
Spirited, it just felt right.
That's a bit, okay. That's cool.
Passing Kreis, he saw a group of allied commanders.
You destroyed all the siege weapons?
Marcus said with a slight smile on his face, or was it just his imagination? Enkrid nodded nonchalantly.
Good.
That was the end of it.
My name is Sinar. Approach now, and you can have me.
The fairy accompaniment crouched slyly, muttering. Fairy jokes, would they ever get old?
Did you hurt your head?
No, if not for my health, I'd be dead. Do you perhaps have a preference for sickly girls?
Was there any point in continuing this conversation? Enkrid shook his head and backed away.
Don't let your guard down.
Marcus encouraged the troops from the front.
We will win.
The timing was perfect. Enkrid had just returned as the hero of the moment. Cheers erupted. The war had just begun, but their morale was incredibly high. This was the first day of the battlefield. Shortly after, the next day began.
You're going out again today, right?
Kreis approached and asked. Enkrid had just finished his morning training. Training even in this situation, some of those who saw it shook their heads in disbelief. Those who knew Enkrid well just took it in stride.
Where to outside?
Why?
Kreis blinked.
We need to keep them on their toes today as well.
Enkrid looked at him, wondering what he meant.
Didn't the battalion commander say anything?
Kreis asked in return. Enkrid nodded. All he had said was to rest well and fight well again. He had also mentioned to speak up if there was anything they needed. There had been no comments about going out on their own and executing an ambush. Given the good outcome of the improvised operation and the authority they had been granted, Marcus had nothing to say.
Act contrary to what the enemy expects and intends.
Kreis proclaimed loudly. Enkrid looked calmly at his wide-eyed subordinate who had raised his voice.
It's a fundamental principle of strategy and tactics.
So? Enkrid's eyes asked, prompting Kreis to speak again. The siege weapons were destroyed. The enemy would be considering a long-term battle. Repairing and resupplying the weapons while just threatening the border guard would favor Martai. They had solidified their supply lines in the rear. So, what should be done today? It was so obvious to Kreis, he was puzzled that no one had mentioned it.
We should disrupt their supply lines.
A basic principle of strategy and tactics. Starve the enemy. While they couldn't literally starve them, they could definitely disrupt their supply lines and make them uneasy. Easy to say, hard to execute. The enemy wasn't stupid, they would be on guard. But here they had Enkrid and the Madmen platoon.
Unconventional forces operate outside the enemy's expectations.
Fewer than 10 men, they could strike out and disrupt the enemy. Esther, who had been absent all night, meowed and looked directly at Enkrid. After hearing cries, Enkrid nodded. It didn't seem like a bad idea. His instincts told him it was worth a try.
Want to come along?
He casually asked Esther, who immediately stood up and moved beside him. Thus the next operation was decided. On the first day they targeted the siege weapons. On the second day they would target the supply lines. Naturally, they planned to go out at night.
Kreis, go report to the higher-ups. Tell them we're going for a night stroll.
Just after sunset, Enkrid began gathering his equipment. Rem, Ragna, Auden, and Finn also stepped forward.
Auden, you.
Yes, brother, I'll stay behind.
Auden was too conspicuous with his large build. He also left Finn behind. Ragna was also asked to stay out of this one. Finn could be at risk, and Ragna might get lost. They couldn't afford to let him become known as the lost one on the battlefield.
Rem Jackson. Good, that's fine. Even if we don't need the stray cat, he can at least carry some stuff.
It's better to leave behind the dumb barbarian.
Despite their constant bickering, there were no better comrades to take into battle.
We'll be back.
Enkrid set off as if he were going to the market to buy some bread. And indeed, when Enkrid returned, he brought back bread.
This is quite tasty.
Everyone marveled at the taste of the bread that Enkrid brought back. It was indeed delicious bread, and naturally it was taken from the enemy's supply lines.
Bake the bread.
General Ulf of Martai had no intention of providing substandard black bread, water mixed with sour wine, or stale-smelling jerky and fruit, just because it was a supply issue. He had several highly skilled battalion commanders under his command, one of whom led a unit he personally trained. They were called the Furnace Unit.
Pile up the stones and apply mud to the gaps.
The Furnace Unit lived up to its name. After establishing a supply base, they would build furnaces there and bake bread. In a way, it was a half-mad endeavor, but General Ulf knew better than anyone the importance of good food, and now, the battlefield was perfect for deploying the Furnace Unit. Conditions for using the Furnace Unit were restrictive. They were useless in short-term battles or offensives. But in a siege, especially a prolonged one, the Furnace Unit shone brightly. It was a well-known fact that well-fed soldiers fought better. This was something famous strategists unanimously agreed upon, and Ulf followed this advice religiously. Thus, the Furnace Unit of Martai started emitting smoke. They burned firewood, mixed water with the flour they had brought, and began making dough. In less than a day, a savory smell spread all around.
Eat well, Mangonels. We don't need those.
Ulf personally walked among the soldiers, encouraging them.
Who are we, Lions of the East?
The soldiers responded enthusiastically. Martai's morale was unbroken. While the commander's direct involvement played a part, the most important factor was the bread. Among the soldiers baking bread, some were renowned for their culinary skills, even in Martai. Many of them planned to continue running bakeries when they returned to the city. Martai had vast wheat fields in the east of the city, known for producing high-quality wheat. The rainfall was just right, and these fields were once called the Fields of Blood, a place of numerous battles over the decades. The numerous corpses of humans and animals had made the soil fertile. Although the fields had been transformed by the hands of a farming enthusiast, the land had a storied history. Thanks to this fertility, Martai had been cultivating wheat for a long time, leading to a well-developed bread culture and various wheat-based foods. There is a saying that food determines status, and in the central continent, white bread was a symbol of wealth. But Martai was different. Abundant wheat production made white bread a daily staple. With over 30 years of history, it was natural for master bakers to emerge. Some of them even opened bakeries in the central capital. This bread was one of Martai's prides. As Ulf returned to his headquarters and was reviewing plans, he received urgent news. It was bad news.
The supply base has been attacked.
Attacked?
For Martai, the most crucial thing now was the supply. What use was it to besiege if they ended up starving? The supreme commander of Martai, called General, had assigned his most trusted men to the supply unit, 3 battalion commanders, plus the guard captain, a total of 4 trusted and skilled officers. Ulf had placed the supply unit under the command of the 2nd Battalion commander, the quickest thinker and most perceptive of them. He was not one to take anything lightly. The messenger was sweating profusely.
Explain in detail.
When Ulf spoke fiercely, the messenger swallowed and continued.
2 enemy soldiers and a black panther approached, stole bread from the oven, and set a few tents on fire.
These idiots.
Ulf was as furious as he was about the tents catching fire. Why wouldn't he be? He knew the importance of the supply line, which was why he had diverted some of his forces. Moreover, the enemy was trapped. How formidable could the ones sneaking out to attack be? The ones who had destroyed the Manganols before. He would welcome them if they showed up. As the fire of anger blazed in the commander's eyes, the messenger couldn't continue speaking.
Zimmer, you fool. You weren't just spacing out and got caught, were you?
The 2nd Battalion commander's name was Zimmer. Smart, quick-witted, and meticulous, he rarely made mistakes. But why hadn't he reported this himself?
Where is Zimmer?
The messenger quickly replied at the mention of the 2nd Battalion commander's name.
He said he was pursuing the attackers.
At the messenger's words, Ulf exhaled a few times before speaking.
Tighten the security. If it happens again, I will not forgive you.
In battles, a commander who loses can be forgiven, but a commander who is lax in security cannot. Enkrid raided the supply base effortlessly, literally effortlessly.
Shall we go?
Let's do it.
There was nothing difficult about it. Smoke billowed above their heads, and tents were everywhere. The guards were numerous, and there were no apparent gaps, but that wasn't a problem.
Craw.
Esther went first. The panther charged forward, followed by Enkrid and Rem. Esther's movements seemed lighter than usual. With a swipe of her paw, she half-severed an enemy soldier's shin, and with a flick of her tail, she struck their heads, causing their eyes to roll wildly.
Attack.
There was no need to drag it out. Enkrid rushed in and slit the throats of a couple of enemies, and amidst the smell of blood, the savory aroma hit his nose. In fact, the savory smell had been teasing his senses for a while now. Taking advantage of the enemy's confusion, Jackson set several tents on fire, and Enkrid, along with Rem, grabbed a few pieces of bread and made their escape. They deliberately took a route through the forest on their way back. If the enemy pursued on horseback, there would be no escape. But on foot, they could easily outrun them. Their stamina was vastly superior. After running for several hours without rest, the pursuers were nowhere to be seen.
We should have just slaughtered them all.
Rem said regretfully, clicking his tongue. Enkrid shook his head.
This much is enough.
They returned and distributed the bread.
You can report it the next day.
The sentry had said on their way back. Marcus, the battalion commander, had already thought ahead for them. Enkrid, Rem, and Jackson took a well-deserved rest and slept soundly. It was a very bright and hot morning on the 3rd day of the battle. The summer sun rose early, so after finishing his morning training in the sunlight, Enkrid came in after washing up.
The bread tastes fantastic!
Crace remarked with renewed admiration. Well, it was delicious.
Don't eat too much.
Enkrid tapped Kreis on the back of the head and went to find the battalion commander to report. He saw something being cooked in a pot right under the fortress wall. The commanders were all gathered around the bubbling stew. Their armor was still clean since they hadn't fought a single battle yet. In contrast, Enkrid's armor was stained with blood. Although he had wiped it, the stains remained.
So you checked out the supply base?
Marcus asked, sitting on a backless wooden chair.
While I was there, I set a few fires.
I see. Marcus just nodded, and the ferry company commander beside him muttered.
Is it a hobby or a specialty?
She was talking about setting fires. Enkrid had been thinking that setting fires was becoming a habit, but what better way to damage a supply base than by setting it on fire?
Would you like a bowl?
The first company commander offered, holding up a ladle of stew. The smell was quite enticing.
Who cooked this?
As Enkrid spoke, the border guard commander brought over a chair for him. It was a wooden chair without a backrest, just like the one the battalion commander had. As he sat and took in the aroma of the stew, he thought it would taste twice as good if dipped with bread.
Hold on a moment.
Enkrid fetched the bread they had stolen. It was a baguette, hard on the outside and soft on the inside, well-baked, savory, and crispy.
Here.
When they broke the baguette and dipped it into the stew.
Excellent.
The first company commander spoke with rare enthusiasm. His cheeks flushed. Wasn't he known to be a foodie? Kreis had mentioned something along those lines. Enkrid tasted it as well. It was delicious. The crust of the bread felt hard, but as soon as he bit into it, it crumbled softly, the white interior mixing with his saliva. Meanwhile, the rich stew broth swirled around in his mouth. It was truly a wonderful taste.
So they were well prepared? They planned to starve us out after isolating us. They even built furnaces to bake bread. Ulf's reputation as a warmonger seems well deserved.
Marcus spoke with a smirk, exuding confidence. Their forces were still superior. They had cavalry and even the luxury of setting up furnaces. Despite this, Marcus remained unflustered. Enkrid now understood what Marcus believed in. He planned to do his part to honor that belief. If he didn't step up, he wouldn't be able to protect even his seasoned jerky or orange marmalade. Food was important. That was why everyone was busy eating without a word. While they were eating, two nobles approached. Their clothes were as clean as the armor of the commanders. One of them, with a noticeably wider forehead, spoke.
Have you considered peace?
The relatively younger noble behind him also spoke.
Considering the stark difference in power, if we could resolve this through negotiation somehow.
Most of the nobles in the border guard were those who had bought their titles, or those who had lost their ancestral positions and remained barons. What would bring high-ranking nobles here? But the situation had changed significantly. Once the country stabilizes, even Count or Viscount might get involved here. Before that could happen, Viscount Bentra and other nobles were already trying to stake their claim. Enkrid didn't know much about politics and didn't care to, but thanks to Big Eyes Kreis, he had a rough idea. That guy's chatter was incessant, but really it didn't seem important. If anyone attacked, they just needed to fend them off. Combat, swords, fighting, battles, the battlefield. Those things gave Enkrid a strange thrill.
I guess I have a bad taste too.
Why did his heart race at the thought of battle and fighting? No, from the beginning, he had longed for and admired such things, which is why he wanted to become a knight. It wasn't because he had some grand vision or dream. It started with imagining himself charging across the battlefield. After a brief moment of reflection, Marcus looked at the two nobles and chuckled.
Why? Now that the city looks like it might grow, do you think you'll become something too? So, instead of fighting Martai, you'd prefer to make peace and claim that you were at the center of that peace.
Is that it? Enkrid let it pass over him, but Kreis would have nodded in agreement. Marcus was quite perceptive politically, even if he didn't know much else. He had hit the nail on the head.
Shut your mouths and go inside. If you don't want to die, thank this named hero here.
He was a company commander now, but he had started as an ordinary soldier. Moreover, he came from some rural village and joined the army to earn a living. The nobles had no reason to bow their heads to Enkrid. He was a hero to the soldiers, not to the nobles.
I've said my piece.
It was a proposal. We made it because the enemy's forces seemed dangerous.
The two nobles rambled, and Marcus waved them off. After they left, Marcus picked up a wooden bowl, slurped some stew, and then spoke.
They're the kind of guys you just want to cut down. Don't you agree?
He was speaking to Enkrid.
Killing nobles is a serious crime.
Enkrid replied, and Marcus continued nonchalantly.
We could challenge them to a duel and accidentally kill them.
Who would accept the commander's duel challenge? They'd just appoint a proxy.
This was the first company commander's reply.
That's just a manner of speaking.
Listening to this, Enkrid brought up a question that had arisen in his mind.
What is a named hero?
It was impressive. An independent company commander.
Instead of answering, Marcus gave a thumbs up.
I'm thinking of imitating it myself later.
The first company commander chimed in from the side. The border guard commander just nodded. Enkrid felt no shame in what he had done out of a sense of bravado. He just thought that these guys were really just a bit annoying.
So what's the plan for next?
They were nearly finished eating. As they were about to stand up, Marcus asked,
How many more times are you planning to go?
A few more times.
The first time was an unexpected strike, but the second time wouldn't be. They would be prepared. No matter how skilled Enkrid was, or how wildly Rem wielded his axe, they wouldn't survive if they were surrounded.
Something is bugging me,
Enkrid replied. It wasn't an empty statement. When he raided the supply base, after setting a few tents on fire and on his way back, he felt something peculiar. It was a matter of intuition and sixth sense.
It felt like Kreis hiding a coin.
It was the same feeling he had when he saw Kreis sneaking a few coins away. He felt that the enemy was hiding something more. He wanted to check it out. The tap-tap-knock-knock operation. The idea was to tap them, and if an opportunity presented itself, to knock them down. That was the gist of the operation. Enkrid came up with the basic plan, and Kreis filled in the details. When they returned to the barracks and discussed when to go and where to strike with Kreis,
Then let's go at sunrise this time,
Kreis said. It was a calm suggestion, but anyone with a bit of military knowledge would have thought it brilliant. But Enkrid thought it was reasonable. They had attacked at night before, so this time they would try it in broad daylight. It seemed like a good plan.
It sounds fun, brother.
Auden responded after hearing the plan. The key to this operation was the bear.